everyone, I'm doing another SFF Babbles talk today, and this one is an introduction to reading science fiction and fantasy. Where do you start? If you walked into the UK Waterstones, and America Barnes and Nobles I suppose, and had a good look round, you would find generally a good bookcase full of sci-fi and fantasy. I have found in bookshops, particularly in the UK, the two genres are mushed together, and you kind of wander along the shelves and wonder what's what, pull them out, read the blurb, have a look at the cover, and then kind of decide, fantasy, oh, sci-fi. So it's really hard to pin down actually how many of each genre that bookshop has in stock, because it's just all shoved together. Unlike the crime, which gets like reams and reams of bookcases, sci-fi and fantasy, you're digging, you're searching. And for a new reader into the genre, that can be really off-putting. So the first thing I'm going to say, if you've not read sci-fi and fantasy before, or you've sort of tiptoed your way around it but not really jumped in whole hog, if you walk into Waterstones, you will find tables in front of their genre shelves. And generally, most stores will have a sci-fi and fantasy, either buy one get one half price, buy one get one free, or top picks, top recommends for those genres. So it might be worth having a little peruse of the table first, just to see what's out there. If there's anything you recognise, a lot of those books on the table will be linked to TV shows. Currently you will find Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams on that table because the TV show's just been on. You will find American Gods by Neil Gaiman, again because it's been dramatised. Things like The Handmaid's Tale will be there by Margaret Atwood. So there is that option for you to kind of just be exposed to a small range of sci-fi and fantasy books that are currently popular. What I would really like to point out to you is sci-fi and fantasy genres are huge. Now, going back to those bookcases in Waterstones, you will see the majority of books. But if you wander around the corner to the graphic novels collection, there are sci-fi and fantasy books in there as well. You just know what to look for. I've picked up a small little collection of some examples. There's Girl Genius. This is a steampunk fantasy story. Very well good. This is not mainstream though. You will need to search for this. But if you do come across it, I highly recommend it. The artwork is very stunning. And they also have an online comic, which they post every week, and that is worth tracking down as well. You will find things like the superheroes. Here's my Wonder Woman one, but obviously there's all the Marvel and the DC range. Superheroes, as far as I'm concerned, kind of comes under the sci-fi radar, as far as I'm concerned. But there are loads of these, and it can be really daunting where to start with the superhero graphic novel. I would say, if in doubt, start with volume 1 or issue 1 or the beginning of something and just work your way through from there. Constantine's another one. This is one of those characters in the superhero range where there are many, many different variations of him. This is the previous reboot series. Obviously there's the Hellblazer series, there's the Hellblazer series, there's Constantine the Hellblazer. There are many variations. So again, try and find the beginning of a particular series. Look for volume 1 on the spine. X-Files, sci-fi paranormal. It's a TV spin-off tie-in graphic novel. You will find lots of things like this. Doctor Who is particularly renowned for it at the moment. Star Trek have their own range. Star Wars obviously has loads. So kind of plump for picking a storyline that sounds interesting to you or a character focus that you know about. And then Fables. This is obviously retelling of fairy tales. This is volume 1. Slightly more classic artwork style in here. But again, look for the number 1 in the series and give it a go. It might be your cup of tea, it might not. I would highly recommend, if you want to try graphic novels, go to your local library, because graphic novels are quite a bit pricier than a book, and if you end up not enjoying it or not interested in it, it can be a bit of a waste of money. So try and find the bargains, or your local library. There we go, that's that one. So obviously I've touched on it a little bit, but in the book range there will be TV tie-in books. They're normally at the end of the sci-fi fantasy genres. So this is one of my Doctor Who ones. They are written by a variety of authors, so no two books will be the same. So if you're looking for a tie-in to your favourite TV or film or even game series, look out for characters that you particularly like, monsters that you particularly like, or timelines within the series that you like, and you will generally find a book that will fit in there for you. Something I will say is, don't be put off by the size of a book. This is an example. This is Lord of the Rings. This is the complete Lord of the Rings. This is everything that Lord of the Rings published and the appendices, and it is in pretty small font form as well. Don't let that put you off. Beauty with Lord of the Rings, it has been published in other formats. So you could have 3 individual stories, or if you're really lucky, 6 individual stories. It depends how you want to do it. And again, with the bigger books, borrow them from your library first to try them out. Most libraries have at least 2 copies of Lord of the Rings. Sci-fi. Sci-fi comes in various sizes. This is one of my larger ones, Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. Again, there's the print. Don't let it put you off though. Have a go. Try it out. You might enjoy this. But sci-fi books also come very, very skinny, particularly the classic style ones. Another thing I will also say, don't be put off by a cover. Nothing rings more true than you can't judge a book by its cover than in the sci-fi and fantasy genres. Some of the best sci-fi stories in the world have the most dreadful covers. Don't judge the book by its cover. Read the blurb, try the first chapter, give it a go before you decide, no, I'm not judging that. There are many different types of fantasy. This is satire, humorous fantasy by the late great Terry Pratchett. You will find shelves of his books in bookshops and libraries, or you should do. But if you like your fantasy light, or if you like satirical looks at real life, plump for a Discworld. Anyone will do. And the beauty with the Discworld series, they do pretty much stand alone by themselves, so you can just jump in and go for it. There are various series in there. There is a guide online for that. If I can find it, I'll leave a link to it down below. If not, just Google it, it'll be there. And the other thing I will say is, don't be put off by where a sci-fi fantasy book is. You could find a book you quite fancy in the adult sci-fi and fantasy department. You might find a book you quite fancy in the YA department. Most of the books on my shelf are a nice mix of YA and adult books. Here's 2 new releases from last year. They're both YA. One is sci-fi, one is fantasy. They were both really good reads in their own different way. So don't ever be embarrassed to pick up a YA book. You will be pleasantly surprised by them. Kitty G has done a video on this, and I'll leave a link to that down below in the description box, because she is much more eloquent and much more organised than I am about tips for new readers. But the one thing that I would say we both definitely agree on, if you start reading a book and by the end of chapter 2 you don't like it, stop. Put it down. Do not feel you have to carry on just because everybody says Robin Hobb's the greatest writer ever, or just because everyone says you will love this series. If you're not enjoying it, don't force yourself to read it, because you will just loathe every single page that you read, and it will be a slog, and you will probably never touch that genre ever again. So definitely, if you've picked up a book and you don't like it, stop. No one is making you finish the book. If you want to come back to it, give it another try, that's fine. That's a good way to see if you still like the book or not, or still hate the book or not. But if you are not enjoying it, stop. General tips for reading sci-fi and fantasy. take the plunge, go in there, pick up something wildly, totally out of your comfort zone, or pick something that you think, oh yeah, actually, that sounds like I might like it. The beauty of these two genres is there is so much choice out there. There's almost too much choice. There are so many different subgenres of sci-fi and fantasy, and that could be a whole different video, and I'm still learning about them. I mean, heck, there's about half a dozen I've never even heard of before. But if you don't try, then you will never know if you like them. Like I say, do try and go into your local library. A good librarian should be able to point you in a general direction of what's a good place to start with, what they particularly like in those genres, and certainly they'll be able to point you out and say, yes, this is the first one in the series. No, you don't want to read that one. That's like book 14. Don't let that put you off either. Just because a book is one in umpteen in a series, don't let it put you off. Still try it. You might like it, you might not like it, and you don't always have to read the rest of the series to enjoy it. Go into the bookshops, have a rummage on those shelves, check out the top picks table, check out what's on offer. Go online, go and chat to people on Twitter, on Goodreads. There are groups on Goodreads that focus on sci-fi and fantasy. Check out the top 20 Goodreads suggestions for the genres, and just search around until you find something that you think, yeah, I like the sound of that. I've just done a review for this book where I leapt in not knowing anything about it, and I really enjoyed it. Sometimes you need to do that with a sci-fi and fantasy book. Sometimes going in knowing the tiniest little details of the world building can destroy the reading experience, and you end up not enjoying it as much. So don't be afraid. Don't let books put you off. It's only paper. It's only words on a page. And remember, there are different formats for sci-fi and fantasy. There's the bog standard books, there's graphic novels, there's also audiobooks. So there are plenty of options out there to help you tease your way into those genres. Believe me, if you find something you like in there, you'll never leave, because sci-fi and fantasy are so big, so amazing, and literally the sky is the limit to what can happen in those genres. So I hope that was kind of helpful for you. Please do go and check out Kitty's video, because she's so much better at it than I am. So, go and see what she has to say. Link is down below in the description box. You can find me on Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter. If you want some help finding a sci-fi book or a fantasy book, just tweet me. I'll get around to answering you and let you know what I think you should try out. And yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching, and happy reading. Bye.